India, and people from Asia in general. Now, keep in mind that the U.S. has 4.4% of the world's population. What that means is that the rest of the world has 95.6% of the world's population. So naturally, there's a whole lot more people outside the U.S. than inside. So it's important for us to understand that if we're going to be successful in sales, in worldwide sales, we're going to get calls from other countries and people that have a thick accent, maybe have English as a second language. So what do we do to master the psychology and the understanding and increase our odds of being successful professionally with people from these regions? Now, keep in mind that the impression that a lot of us get in the United States is people in these countries are cheap. They want the price is what's most important. But we understand the psychology. And if we take a look at this graph, we'll see, before we get into that, a little background, we'll see the total number of English speakers in the world, in the countries where we have the most English speakers. And we'll see there are a whole lot of people outside of the United States that speak English. So since our website is in English, we get calls from English-speaking people. So if you take a look at this graph, you see there's a whole lot of English speakers that live outside the U.S. It's even more powerful in this second image. We can see that there are 1.18 billion English speakers in the world. And of that 1.18 billion, only 283 million of them are from the U.S. So in other words, there are a lot more English speakers outside the U.S. than inside the U.S. A lot more. So we have to understand. So here's the thinking. When I lived in Asia, I noticed that a lot of times in the marketplaces where people buy their food, so people will buy their food in these places where there are vendors. Now, one big thing that has stood out of my mind, and I want you to get this, is they typically do not have the prices listed, okay? So what that means, if we negotiate in the United States for a car that we might buy once every 2, 3, 4, 5 years, that may be the extent of our negotiating experience. We may negotiate on other things too, but mainly it's going to be a car. And so if we negotiate with that infrequent amount of times, in India, they may negotiate 500, 600, 700, 1,000 times a year, because every time they buy a banana, or they buy some meat, or they buy a bag of rice, they're negotiating. The prices typically are not listed, as you'll see in these pictures, on these vendors' items for sale. So every single thing they buy, it's a negotiation. And so it's not necessarily that they're cheap or they're looking for the lowest price. Naturally, they want that. We all do. But the key thing is just part of the culture. That's just how you buy things. And if you don't negotiate, it just is counter to the culture. So we have to understand for that perspective. Now, in these countries, they also have retail establishments where the prices are listed, okay? And the prices are listed, and they understand when they go to the cash register, that's the price they pay. The person poking the cash register buttons doesn't have the power to change the prices. So if we adopt that attitude, saying, hey, we are already a discount retail establishment, and the prices are what they are, you don't have the control to change them, then that puts them in the mindset, okay, this is a retail establishment. And if they want what you're selling bad enough, don't think that you have to discount it or they're not going to buy. Or don't think they're just going to shop around. As long as you offer the good service and you're courteous and you really listen, you really try to understand. Now, keep in mind, if they speak with a thick accent, if you put out enough effort, you and I both know that you can understand what they're saying if you really, really try. So keep in mind, if you were born to their mother and father, you would be just like them. You would speak with the same accent, okay? So have compassion. We need to have compassion as fellow human beings. Understand English is a second language, just like if we tried to, take Chinese class or Spanish class, and that wasn't a language we spoke, that we would have probably ask the same question over and over and over again, because we want to strengthen the little rope of understanding in our mind. So keep in mind, they are going to ask the same question over and over and over again. It's not because they're dumb. They're, probably quite smart. But it's just because they have the lack of precise understanding of the language like you and I do. So be patient, be kind, just like we would want them to be if we were trying to speak in their language. So be compassionate and caring because they're fellow human beings. Okay. So the key thing is, remember, it's part of the culture. It's not because they're cheap. It's just their way of buying. Okay. And so if we stand firm and say, hey, we are a retail establishment, we're already a discount, you give super service, we're super caring, super understanding, compassion, you can sell to people from India. And you can sell very, very well because you'll stand out in the crowd because you take time to listen and you take time to show understanding and you show that you really, really care truly from the heart. And it's got to be sincere. So I hope that gave you some great insight. I've had experience living in Asia, kind of understand the culture, and have been studying more lately. I hope this gives you some insight and increases your success in selling in Asian markets and India especially. Thank you.